actors and director of Saw.
There's an old ghost story about a woman named Mary Shaw.
The ventriloquist who was murdered.
She was buried with her doll collection.
They didn't stay dead. On March 16th,
they'll come for us, one by one.
If you scream, you die.
She's here.
What's going on? Dead Silence. Rated R. In theaters March 16th.
I am from beyond. Listen, and all you desire will be yours. Welcome to Spider-Dan and the Secret Balls. Prepare for Prattle.
Well, Danny boy, them plates of alcohol and from plant to plant went down the mountainside. That summer's gone when all the roses are falling. Dead you must go, this you must go, but I must buy.
Welcome to Prattle World. I am your host, the ever-amazing, ever-spectacular Spider-Dan. And in this podcast, I spotlight entertainment's best-kept secrets that a mainstream audience may find boring. And welcome to Danny B Movies, where I introduce a guest and or myself to a cult movie. And this is certainly a cult movie. Some people love it. Some people hate it. The director and the writer, they hate it. So we're going to talk about it. We were going to do our top 5 creepy doll movies, but unfortunately Ben here, the attention-seeking geek, is here with us today.
Hello.
He's been a busy boy, so he's not had chance to do the research. He's got his own YouTube channel. He's got a wife. He's got a daughter. He's got things. He's got shit going on. So we decided we'll just boil it down to one film. And this was to celebrate the release of Megan, a James Wan produced film. So I thought, let's go back and look at Dead Silence from 2007, directed by the man himself, James Wan. Welcome, Ben. How are you doing? Are you still being puppeted by your wife?
I don't know who's got their hand up where, to be honest, some days. But to be honest, I think it's probably my daughter with her hand up, both of us, all
Pulling
day
all the
and
strings.
all night. Yes. But so I appreciate you being so accommodating of me being a terrible friend and a terrible guest and not being able to do what you initially planned. But I think this will be fun. I think, you know, we can do a proper deep dive into this this film. I'm calling it that at a stretch.
Don't show your hand too early.
It's a project.
It's an attempt. We'll get into it. We'll get into it. But Ben, since people may not have heard of Dead Silence, they'll have heard of all of the other James Wan universe of stuff, the Malignants, the Insidiouses, the Conjurings, the Saws. Tell us a little bit about this plot.
Yes, so this film came out in 2007. I think I'm going to struggle a bit with the synopsis, to be honest, because things just kind of happened. But essentially, what it is it opens with a guy and his wife, I think.
Yes, that's correct.
They receive a mysterious package, and that package is an old style ventriloquist dummy. And lo and behold, when he pops to the shops or whatever he's doing, in his absence, the dummy appears to murder the wife in horrific circumstance. Then an investigation takes place from the guy, and that's kind of running alongside the police, obviously investigating him for the potential murder of his wife as well, because of course they don't believe his story of it being a dummy. He sort of tracks down his estranged father. He's there with his stepmom, which we'll come back to. Anyway, it turns out that there's been this kind of fable about a lady called Mary Shaw, and it turns out that Mary Shaw was a kind of local celeb, if you will, for her kind of ventriloquist skills. But she did some very bad things, and Beyond the Grave continues to do those bad things, and it sort of revealed that it's potentially her spirit kind of behind the dummy's actions, and comedy ensues. No, so the film's sort of about him discovering more and more about Mary Shaw, and obviously there's a sort of big confrontation at the end, and a bit of a twist.
Oh yeah, let's not give it away just yet.
No.
The twisty of the twists. Yes. So I will say it's very mid 2000s. This film. It's got all the trappings of. I think the 2000s were a really weird era for like horror movies because they weren't quite 80s and 90s when there was kind of a good general mix of stuff. I think they were trying to figure out what was the thing. What are people afraid of in the noughties? What is something that we can grab and use and talk about? I think a lot of it was probably kind of a 9/11 thing that people didn't really maybe want to see kind of horrific things happening because it was all happening in the real world. Maybe I'm not sure, but I think there's very few films I can think of in that kind of era where I'm like, that is just amazing. A level of skill of a horror film, 5 stars. It's very rare that I'll go, ooh, that in the 2000s was really good. I can't, like, I could probably pick maybe 10, maybe 5.
I'd struggle to even think of films, to be honest. I mean, I think that effects played a big part in what you're saying as well, because it was that weird transition period during those kind of early noughties where the special effects were there, but they weren't quite kind of up to scratch, or they weren't readily available to the lower budget films. So you get this kind of weird middle ground, and we'll come back to that. But
I think like the color palette in this was just like, oh fuck, I'm definitely
it's the greyest film I've ever seen in my life.
It's like a grey blue.
At the end, they had the whole file of the film. They highlighted the whole file, with all the edits, and they just went to saturation and turned it all the way down to -5.
That's what the temperature feels like when I was watching it. I was like, am I just cold, or is it the film? Is it the film I'm watching that's just really cold? But I will say this: I don't think it's one of Lee Winnell's or one of James Wan's best films, and they feel the same. There was a lot of problems behind the scenes. There was basically they were still promoting Saw at this point. They were still selling that.
Oh, okay.
And they made kind of a deal after just finishing it with Universal to say, hey, we want a horror movie. They've probably seen Saw or seen something else. They've gone, right, pitch us an idea now. And they were like, James likes creepy dolls in everything, so let's do that. And he was like, and they were like, right, good. Sold it, signed up to it. And Lee Winnell describes it as being creativity at gunpoint because he had to come up with something, but because they'd already decided on what the idea was, they go, no, don't like that, change it. Any alterations or changes to the script, they were policing. And they also got in another writer. And apparently the filming of it was quite difficult as well. But James Wan has not gone into that in much detail. But I just know that it was a difficult time. Lee Winnell has been like, I'll never work for a big studio again. I'll only write spec scripts. And, they've got to stay loyal to the spec script, So, yeah, it's interesting. I imagine James, because of his position now, I'm not sure who does all the films he usually does. I don't know if it's under his own company or is it with Universal maybe. I'm not sure.
Not Blumhouse, is it? No.
I think some of them might be. Write in on a postcard. Tell us who James Wan mostly does his films with.
Postcard?
On a postcard, yes.
Yes.
Answers on a postcard, please.
The greyest postcard you can find.
The bluest, greyest, grimmest postcard. It was like, because it almost comes across like a seaside town, but it's not. It's just like this big, horrible lake next to a theatre.
The lake, right? Like, where... It's the weirdest. The lake felt so misplaced. Like I I didn't understand why anything would be located where that was. Like it just felt like such a weird kind of fantastical location for what was it, like a theater?
Yeah, it was like a Guignol, or whatever they call it, kind of theatre, that kind of vaudevillian idea, kind of a bit gothic as well. It was, I don't know if it flooded or it was on an island and the waters rose, or I can't remember.
Felt like a weird, like Lord of the Rings-esque kind of location rather than, your kind of horror film. Your derelict
town.
Like I'd expect it just to be like a derelict town or whatever, in the middle of that. And yeah, it was that was one of many weird things. You know what though, Dan? It completely checks out what you're saying about, because I haven't done any research about anything, because I'm such a great guest.
I'm sorry, you have not done any research. You, of all people. I wouldn't. I can't believe you. I can't believe it. Honestly.
Terrible, Mr. Blaggett. No, but I, that it's interesting to hear, because I think that really comes across the forced cuts. The narrative felt very disjointed. Scenes felt misplaced. Editing felt rushed. So all of that stuff seems intrinsically linked to a studio getting their noses in
where they shouldn't be.
Exactly.
I will say, I think a lot of the horror stuff is really effective. I think some of the jump scares work for me. I think Billy and Mary Shaw as characters, as concepts work. I think for me, the main problem for it is everything that's not about the creepy dolls of Mary Shaw. It's just they're like, "Hi, Dad, how are you doing? Great. I don't love you, but I do. I've had a stroke. Bye." And then, the fridging of the girlfriend at the beginning, I felt was a mistake, because that could have been interesting if she was along on the adventure with them. I kind of get why they did it, but it's.
The bit I bought into the most was the flashback scene of Mary Shaw on stage, kind of passively doing her routine, but secretly kind of harboring these dark kind of intentions. And I found that whole scene really interesting, and the idea of her maybe taking children and kind of mutilating them to be this kind of puppet, human puppet. I think that is so much more interesting than like the ghosty ghoul Mary Shaw stuff. So I don't know. Has there been like a prequel or something like that for this?
Well, I was going to say, there's this does feel like a dry run for the stuff that he would do later, The Conjuring and Insidious and things like that. I think the nun and Billy have a weird similarity in their face, like that character, the kind of blank eyes and things. And I know there's that is it the Bride in Black or something in Insidious? Who's looks a bit like Mary Shaw, has a similar appearance to Mary Shaw. Again, you've got Annabelle, who's another doll, creepy weird doll. Billy from Saw is called Billy as well, which you might have thought maybe we didn't want.
Really would have thought, yeah.
You would have thought just maybe not call him Billy, maybe any other name but Billy. You would
literally anything. You know what though, the clown.
Oh yeah.
When he appeared and had his little moment, I was like, man, that should have been the puppet. I think that would have been a lot more kind of original and interesting. And
no, I agree. I think that's one of the more effective parts of it. I like when they're like all of the Mary Shaw's faces coming out of them and things. Spoilers, by the way, if you haven't seen Dead Silence, it is available on UK Netflix if you have it. Actually, I saw that it was available on YouTube as well. So if you do a little Google, you can find it on YouTube as well if you're not in the UK.
The whole film?
Yeah, it looks like it.
Wow.
So there you
That's
go.
a sign of a good film.
You never know. Some of the stuff I cover is on there, and some of the stuff I quite like. It just depends how keen the studio is for you not to that be on YouTube, basically, if they care that much about the film. But it is actually coming out on 4K very soon by Scream Factory in the US, so it'll probably very slowly but surely make its way over here, and one of the other DVD Blu-ray brands we have. But yes, It, ex- uh, it's hard. It's hard to talk about. Like you were saying, it's a short film. Like again, I don't hate it.
Yeah.
I don't love it, but I think there's the beginnings of something here. Like obviously he's done James Wan Lee Winnell done Saw. Winnell was in Saw. You know, they have done the gruesome, twisty turny kind of body horror, pornography type stuff. So this is them going, what if we do a little bit of a ghosty thing, a gothic, a classic kind of ghost story? So I like that they like
Spooky.
Yes, spooky, a little bit spooky. You know, the stretching their legs, they're seeing what they can do. And the cinematographer actually says this is the beginnings of the James Wan we know today, is this film. Like this is where it begins. So I can really see that journey. And I think maybe if they had more creative control on this, if they had more input, then it would be a bit more popular. Box office wise, it didn't do very well. But Lee Winnell said he described it as Universal dumped it in a river like toxic waste. So it absolutely bombed at the box office, but it does have quite the cult following. I think there is something here in this film to enjoy. I think if you want to see a creepy ghost, a YouTube video with a ghost and a dummy in it, Google this film. They are quite effective. But yeah, it's not a perfect film by any standards, but I can definitely see what would come afterwards and the influences. In fact, even speaking of Billy from Saw, he's in the movie.
Oh, is he one of the?
Yes, he's basically he's in the foreground when they're looking at all the hundreds and hundreds of dummies.
Yeah.
And he's kind of leaning against a pillar right in the foreground. So if you spot him,
as a collector, I looked at that and I was like, what a display case that is. That's a dream right there. Right there. What a setup. Mary Shaw knew what she was doing.
Mary Shaw, she knew how to manage stuff. So yeah, we have Jamie, I think he's called Jamie Ashen, is it?
Oh, who cares? Budget Ryan Reynolds. I've wrote down.
Jason Stackhouse, if you're a True Blood fan, if you remember True Blood.
Oh yeah. And he was just as charismatic in that as he was.
Oh, I didn't mind him as Jason Stackhouse because he was just an idiot anyway. I love the second season where he's in that religious kind of commune, and there's the priest and his very, very attractive wife who's in like Pitch Perfect and everything. And me and my friends used to joke about it. We used to do impressions of the priest, and we'd be like, "Jason Stackhouse, stop fucking my wife."
Nice, nailed it. No.
Yes. Acting talent.
But yeah, I think he should always play the idiot because he's just got one of those faces that just constantly looks clueless, lost, but quite sexy.
Yeah, he's a good-looking guy. He's a good-looking.
Yeah,
guy. He's Australian though, isn't he? So most Australian people look pretty good, I think. Like
I don't know. I've been over there. Not everyone. Not everyone.
Not the ones that have been attacked by all the deadly animals out there, I imagine. But no. This is one thing I had an issue with, among many things. But he, at the beginning of the film, his wife is talking about the legend of Mary Shaw, and there's this poem, and be sure not to scream and all that, and. And he's kind of like, I don't know what you're talking about. I've never heard of anything like this. But then in the next scene, he's like, from the town I'm from, having a dummy in the house is a bad omen. And then he gets to the town, and literally all the town is based on or circulates or talks about is Mary Shaw. How would he not know this story? Or, even if his family is trying to protect him and hide it from him, this backstory, some other fucker in the town will tell him. Definitely, surely.
Yeah, like the kids at school.
Yeah, absolutely.
Like, hey, mate, come here. I've got a story. Mary Shaw. He'd know. There'd be viral videos going around. Like, he'd know. Yeah, I mean, the whole opening kind of scenes with him and his wife, like she was just so unrealistically horny. It was like it was cringeworthy. But then they kind of they got to the point where they sort of revealed that she was kind of craving a baby because she had that moment in the mirror and stuff. And I just felt like if that was if that was written better, sorry, like and you know, they sort of lent into that element of her sort of you know, having that kind of maternal need. Like, I think that could have been a really interesting idea, and especially if as you said at the beginning of this show about them drawing out her death a little bit longer, you know, you could almost have like this weird thing where Billy kind of lets her mother him a bit, and you could have kind of had that relationship, and then it would have made the death maybe more emotionally kind of impactful. But it was just felt dumb, that whole exchange.
I mean, she's not a character in the film, is she? Let's be honest. She's just the catalyst of getting the story started. She's like, I love you, and we're happy, we're having a baby, like or we're gonna have I'm having a baby, but you don't know we're having a baby, you know, all that sort of stuff, and then she's dead. You know,
yeah.
I do like the aspect that when Mary Shaw in her form comes, that all the sound is sucked out of the room. I do quite like that idea, but I don't think they do much with it. I think there's an opportunity to play with things like that. Like if
it wasn't clear what was happening, whether that was you as the viewer, you know, whether it was just like sound editing and you know, for atmosphere and part of the soundtrack and stuff, or whether it was part of the plot. Do you know what I mean? Like, and I think it got clearer, but the first time it happened, I just thought it was weird choices with the soundtrack. I was like, oh, they really did a weird thing with the kettle there, and like, and then it kind of went quiet, and it just felt very jarring for me. And
it wasn't.
But if it was clearer that like she kind of was like, what's happening, or it was
What do you think of these interesting map transitions as well? You know, when he's going into the picture, he's driving along, and they go into the sign, and it's him within the sign. It's still driving. What do you think of those?
Yeah, it was weird. Like the eye within the eye bit. That it just felt like there was quite a lot of odd choices that didn't serve the story. And weren't clear as to why those choices have been made. You know what I mean? Like the transitions that you talk of, what did they offer? They didn't add to the atmosphere. They didn't kind of.
You could have just had him driving, because he was already driving over the bridge.
Yeah.
So what was the point of going into the sign and then just showing another angle of him
or
driving
just
over
like lean into like lots of fades to black and stuff, because the saturation was so low. Like if you repetitively use something like a fade to black, then it will kind of add to the atmosphere of like this slow kind of like, you know, dark film. But it was like an Indiana Jones, like, you know, map transition. Like
it's like a road movie. Him and his dummy. I mean, he's a pretty big dummy.
Thelma and Louise, Billy and Ryan Reynolds. What's his name? I forget.
Ryan Quanten.
His name's actually Ryan as well.
I think so. Yeah, I think it's Ryan.
Oh my gosh, are they making them in factories?
Probably.
It's uncanny.
That's Hollywood, isn't it? It's all carbon copy. Yes, Ryan. It is Ryan.
Oh, hilarious.
There you go. He is a literal Ryan. So let's talk about. So we have this murder, and he's brought in for questioning, obviously. Well, he goes to get Chinese, and he comes back, and his wife's like, "I'm in here, honey. I'm in here." And then he goes in there, and she's dead, and she's had her tongue ripped out. It's very it was very reminiscent of The Ring, you know, when they find the girl in like the wardrobe, and she's just all like blue and gnarled and like have that weird face. It reminded me of that, but just with like a big, massive dummy mouth, big jaw, broken jaw thing going on.
It was quite quick. I kind of wanted to drink it in a little bit more. What the detail was of like again, it was like it didn't become clear to me until a couple of more kills down the line that the jaw was. I kind of didn't. Right. I couldn't almost see what happened to her. I was just like, is she where I couldn't understand what the kill was. I would have liked that to have maybe been clearer. Like I would have. Do you know what would have been cool? Like actually seeing her voice come out of the mouth and then have the jaw drop off like mid-sentence, and then that's when he realizes.
Or like have a hand go directly into the mouth and it break the jaw as you're pulling out the scream or something like that. I don't know. But there's something there. I do like the idea of like not screaming. It's a bit like The Quiet Place or something like that. Like the idea that you're not allowed to scream just kind of heightens that horror, isn't it? You're not allowed to have that natural reaction to something terrifying. I quite like
it right though, doesn't it? Let's be honest, because why would you keep that package? Like, do you know what I mean? I'd be chasing the courier down the road like, oi, I don't want this weird black box.
Kill it with
There's
hammers.
A pocket inside. No, thank you. Return to sender.
Oh God, yeah. And we after this we meet New Kids on the Block, Donnie Wahlberg, Marky Mark's brother.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Mark Wahlberg's brother, from New Kids on the Block, as equally a horrible person as Mark Wahlberg.
Equally annoying.
Yeah, equally annoying. I will say, at least he has a character in this film. Everybody else does not. Like, at least he has something going on, and it's somewhat humorous or entertaining. Everyone else is just like, Mary Shaw, Mary Shaw, Mary Shaw. Like, in every fucking scene. And it's just like, oh, she is scary, Oh. And again,
it's just so obnoxious and like far too playful for a police.
He's one of the worst police officers I've ever seen in my life. He's awful. Like it just goes, well, I've got my man, so I'll just sit and wait for him to do something stupid, and then I'll arrest him. And then he does go.
They let him on bail is like unbelievable. Anyway, like he'd be kept in surely. Like,
and he's like not only that, he follows him. He digs up the dummy that he buries, Billy, because he's been told by a crazy lady who lives with the mortician, the Undertaker, to bury this dummy. Buries it, he digs it up, and he's like, hello, neighbor, told you not to leave the city, told you not to leave town, you have. And that would be enough for him to go, right, we're going back to the police station. But he's like, nah, I'll just let you do whatever you think you're doing. Just go about your mission. And then he's like, he even goes, oh, I'm your neighbor, by the way. If he was a murderer, you wouldn't say, oh, by the way, I'm right next door. Come on by.
He's like shaving he's like waiting in the hotel room, like using his shaver, like just the most casual dickhead police officer.
You know what as well? That's like when I do that with my electric shaver, I get hair all the way down my front. Like all the way down my top or whatever I'm wearing. He would be walking around with just hair constantly down his shirt. And people are like, as a cop, you expect them to be kind of somewhat scruffy. Maybe they're drinking, they've got a stain here and there. But I wouldn't expect him just to have like body hair directly on his fucking shirt when he's like interrogating somebody.
I think that's maybe what he had in his mind, that he was going for that kind of rough and ready, police officer that doesn't follow the rules. I think in his head, he was like, that's how I'm going to approach this character. But what came out was just like an oddly jovial
I feel like maybe he went into this thinking it was like a Chucky movie, where it was like, it's like, oh yeah, it's a kooky doll movie. It's
like Seed of or Bride of.
More heightened towards the comedy, because like I think in some ways with Billy, I think it's a good thing that they never show him like walking or running around, like hobbling about, because I think that would kind of kill a lot of the tension and the horror that he brings. Like the slight eye movements and mouth movements and stuff, I think are just enough. But yeah, I think sometimes with some of those lesser Chucky films that I know you're a big fan of, you can just be like, Rah! It's just it's more silly. And there's a lot of killer doll movies out there that are even worse for that than this, like a Pinocchio's Revenge or something. There's all sorts of crazy killer doll.
What? That's a thing?
That's a movie.
Oh my gosh!
Go check.
We do that.
It's too late. It's too late. I picked this one.
I did just watch Guillermo del Toro's Pinocchio, actually.
Yeah, any good?
Oh, sensational!
Have you seen the Disney one? I've heard that's rubbish.
Absolutely awful. Yeah,
right.
It's
cool.
It's one of the it's weirdly emotionless, like for a Tom Hanks film. Like it honestly felt like, yeah, like it had no personality, but it was so clean and looked nice, but it just had nothing. Whereas Guillermo del Toro's completely kind of explodes the text, and just really felt like a great version. So yeah, that's our Pinocchio tangent out the way.
Go check out Pinocchio if you're after living dolls that don't steal your tongues and your screams.
I got no strings. I've got Mary Shaw.
But yeah, I think that was interesting what you were saying about, because there's that big moment where she's doing the ventriloquist act, and she's and the dummy's like, no, I'm going to show you I'm real. I'm going to show you I'm real. Come here, you little. And like there's that kind of schizophrenic thing going on, because that is like I watched Anthony Hopkins and Dickie Attenborough's Magic the other day, which is absolutely amazing. It's less of a horror, more of a kind of a thriller or a drama. It's from like the late 70s, but it's one of like it's amazing. Burgess Meredith's in it as well. Just fucking phenomenal bit of acting and filming and everything. The score's great as well. Lots of award-winning people involved. But anyway, go watch that. Go watch that. But yeah, I quite like that idea that the doll is that there's part of them is coming, like their id or their ego or whatever part of the brain that is unleashed through the doll, where they have to like rein themselves in, but the doll is their like most base desires coming out almost.
Yeah. Oh, and I know that you and I are both massive fans of the ventriloquist in the Batman comics, so that was kind of the first thing that came to mind. Is it Wexler?
Arnold Wesker, I want to say.
Wesker,
Arnold Wesker and Scarface, isn't it?
Scarface, yeah. Gatman. And that was the first thing that came to mind. I was just like, oh, this is cool. This is the thing that intrigues me. It's the idea of and again, it's kind of similar to that Batman villain. It's an older individual who's almost using the puppet as a kind of mouthpiece for all of their kind of deepest, darkest desires, that are kind of clearly being buried away for their whole life. And I just find that a really kind of interesting thing. And I would have found that a lot more interesting for the whole film rather than the kind of like
one scene,
the ghouly, ghosty, spooky stuff. Like, because you can kind of you keep the horror and you keep Billy can still move his eyes and stuff without, and I think that again, that's the fun of Scarface. Is different writers in the comics have obviously done him fully as a kind of fantasy type character where he's kind of doing stuff by himself, but other writers have very cleverly blurred the lines where you're not quite sure, it's like, is Arnold doing that, or is that Scarface? Like, and I think that's always when he's been more interesting for me as a reader, is when you don't really know if that puppet's alive or not. Like, and
you can go either way. It's up to you.
Yeah, and I think that just would have been more compelling for me.
I always liked in the animated series, because obviously they can only show so much kind of violence in a Batman cartoon. Whenever they had Scarface in an episode, they were like, let's just put him in a fucking wood chipper. Just like he's only a fucking doll anyway. Arnold Wesker thinks he's alive, obviously, and he's like, when he's being destroyed.
So good in that series, that like those stories and stuff. And that, to be honest, that was probably my introduction to the character. And then I went back and picked up the books and things. And look, I'd love to see that in Matt Reeves' kind of universe. Like, I don't know how commercially interesting that would be for studio execs and stuff, like for a whole film, But even if he just plays at Penguin's Club, like in the series or something, like I'd be happy with that.
Yeah, like I mean, if he was like a scarecrow in the Dark Knight trilogy, where he like pops up. We have a bit of fun.
Yeah, beginning and end sort of thing.
And then he's off again. Like, he's not the main threat. He's not the main villain, but maybe he's somewhat involved, or he knows a bit of information or something. I don't know. I'd be up for that, because I think he's a good character, and he feels like a classic Batman villain without being one of the classics. Like, he's like a late 80s one, but exactly. all of the things about that character scream like a Mad Hatter to me, or a Humpty Dumpty or something like that. But he's very, very modern, weirdly enough, and I think that's how successful that character is and how much that works. It just makes you feel like he's been around forever.
And because that character as well, and I'm sorry, this is probably a bigger
It was a long tangent.
Pinocchio, but he had different puppeteers, so it wasn't always Arnold. He obviously went on and had those different puppeteers, and one of the interesting ones was that the female who got tangled in with the mob stuff and got shot in the eye or whatever. And yeah, I just kind of like, if Mary Shaw, if this was the story of Mary Shaw's life and her kind of descent into madness, kind of climaxing with her doing these horrible things to horrible kids, like that would have been a really, really cool and interesting film. Even if they went back and did a prequel now, I think that could still be quite interesting.
Yeah, I'd be up for that. I think there's definitely a possibility, because you could show all the previous murders and all the killings she's done from the family tree, all the different family trees, can't you? Like, you could show all that, and you can show her creating the dummies and doing all this, because we know, what she does, and burying them or what have you. I think there's definitely something to be mined that. I quite like the lore of it. The only thing I don't really like about the kind of backstory is they imply that there's this kind of mob justice. So this little kid insults her, so she's not very good at
they went full Freddy, yeah.
Yeah, so that's the thing. So they imply that this boy goes missing, and because she was insulted by this boy, they basically everyone assumes it's her. So they kill her, they cut her tongue out. She has some very odd requirements for her funeral. She wants to become a doll, so they give her the kind of slits in the mouth and the sides of the mouth to make her look more like a dummy, the dull black eyes and everything. But then later on within the film, again, we're just jumping around a lot, but the film does it itself, really, kind of. And it's a very short film as well. It's not
we're
even
just staying true to the.
it's confusing, and it's just in and out all the time. Again, I don't hate it. I've seen worse. I've seen a lot worse, but I can understand why Winnell and One were definitely not happy with this, because it does feel like there's too many cooks stirring this broth. And we go and we find her kind of hideout, her hidden area, which I was like, how has nobody discovered that opening, that door? Because they're looking at this door and they're like, oh, I can't see a door there. And obviously they walk into it and then they're like, oh, yeah, there's a secret passage. It's kind of an optical illusion. And he just walks through it. And he's like, whatever you do, don't scream. And then he's like, oh, where you gone? Where you gone? You disappeared. And then he just comes around the corner. He's like, don't do that to me.
Because what does that mean? Does that mean she owned like the whole theater and there were no staff? Like,
I think she must have
behind the scenes or anything. Like,
they're like, don't visit her upstairs. She's got a little boy on puppet strings up there. And that's the thing as well. Forget about that. But going back to the point about, they kill her, they murder her. And then they all start all the family and the related family start mysteriously dying. And then we're like, okay, so she's taking her revenge because she was just a nice lady who liked puppets and dolls and ventriloquist dummies, whatever you want to call them. And
we all need a hobby, Dan.
Hey, why
no
not?
Judgment
Why not?
Here.
And yeah, it's a heck of a hobby. She's very, very keen. She's got a lot of ideas. So we find out that actually she did kidnap that boy. She did kill him. She did turn him into a doll. So she is pure evil. So they were kind of, in some ways, right to kill her. It's not, obviously not in a court of law or anything, but there's some justification for that. I actually think, because I think they did that with the remake. You were saying with Freddy that they imply, don't they, that he was innocent, but then you find out that he was like a pedo.
In the remake, or
I think so. Yeah, I think in the remake they imply that he may have been innocent potentially.
Right, yeah.
And then they find some like really dodgy photographs at the end, and they all get very upset and very disturbing. And I think the idea of these characters being innocent is actually more interesting than them just being the stereotypically evil character.
Yeah, I mean, with Freddy, he obviously the demon or whatever came in that moment of death and said, "Hey, man, you want an upgrade?" Like, and he was like, "Fuck yeah,
let's go! I want to kill kids." Yeah,
yeah. but yeah, I think there's definitely something more kind of three-dimensional rather for a character that didn't want this life of a spirit, but because of other people's actions, they now have to kind of seek out revenge because what what people did
Sins
was
of the
wrong.
father.
Sin for a sin sort of thing, and like that definitely could have been interesting. But again, it's like because they kind of went down that route of her always being evil, bring some clarity as to why the hell she's got these powers like after. Do you know what I mean? Because like at least with like as corny as some people might find the old Elm Street films and Dream Warriors and all that, like I bloody love that cheese. Give me it on a slice of toast.
That is the best. That is the best one as well.
Credit where credit's due. Like nothing's ambiguous, it's just like, oh yeah, demon came and gave the option and stuff like that. Like I would have liked that in this film, some kind of explanation as to how she got those kind of afterlife powers, because it didn't really make sense there, or whether she was like, I don't know, fiddling around with dark magic or something before she died, like just some kind of context as to how the hell she became a ghost with a long ass tongue after. I don't know.
What did you think to the sexy stepmom?
Oh yeah, I mean she was sus from the start, wasn't she? Let's be honest. Like I was like, yeah, it's probably her, isn't it?
She's in Transporter 2, which I covered recently on the Back to the Filmography podcast. I thought she was quite good in that. I don't think she really gets enough screen time in this but also I don't think the material is that good either.
Oh no, everyone was bad. Like in this film, like even the dad or whatever, who's an actor I recognise.
He's from Shawshank. Bob Gunton, yes. I want to say Bob Gunton.
I said to my wife, I was like, this is one of those actors that's like in loads, but I don't know their names. So
he's in
really recognise them.
He was the owl in Daredevil, the TV show, the Netflix show. That was him as well.
See, this is why you're here, Dan, and this is why I'm here to make you look brighter. But yeah, no, I just thought it was all very melodramatic. It gave her sexy stepmums a bad name, stuff like this type casting.
Do you know the age difference between her stepson and herself in real life anyway?
It's like 3 years or something, 2 years.
It is 3 years, exactly.
Brilliant. Yeah, I mean, it was funny.
This film could have been a whole nother film entirely. What are you doing, stepmom?
But again, it's like if you have her and you like. My first thing when I saw her is, again, I started to get those kind of Batman Scarface imagery in my head of the long red dress, and I was just like, oh, that would be cool, like seeing her with Billy sat on her knee, at the end or whatever. It was ham-fisted. I want to say
hammy. I think I knew about the twist going in as well. Unfortunately, I think someone had told me, or I'd heard it discussed on a YouTube video or a podcast. So I think I saw it coming, and I think it's fairly well I think at the end it's like, whoa, twist.
Oh, it was so sore, wasn't it? Like, you could see the influence there, like,
and you got the flashback, and it's like, these are all the clues we gave you, and now you see, and literally. Speaking of getting inside of stepmoms, the stepmom got inside of the dad. So we learn throughout the film that her powers come from she lives within the dolls now she's died. That's how. So they start destroying all the dolls, they burn down the theater, they start shooting it with a shotgun, and we just kind of we get past that. We think, oh, there's only one doll left, it's Billy, you got to destroy Billy, and finally they chuck him in the fire, which they should have done at the start, obviously, or killed.
When you have that thing delivered, that would have gone straight in the fire.
I'd probably just return to sender. There you go, somebody else's problem. But yeah, and then we learn that we go home, and they're like, right, we've killed the doll, we're fine. Apparently the Undertaker, who's like knows the whole story because he was there and everything. and his wife, who's got some severe mental health problems like dementia or something. And she's like, the woman with dementia is like, oh, your father came, Ashen came, and he's like, no, my dad's in a wheelchair. I don't know what you're talking about. You're talking absolute rubbish. He goes back, and we find he's got a big rod up his back because Mary Shaw has turned him into a ventriloquist dummy, like a living ventriloquist. So he's like back half. It's like it
likes that. I thought that was it was gross, and because of that, I I enjoy gross things, and I was like, it's such a shame that something interesting like that has come right at the end, and very flash kind of imagery. You know, I would have. That would have been something cool to have seen a couple of times throughout the films. You know, maybe in the kids.
Yeah, that would have been like all the people telling him the story is like couples, and the couples are Mary Shaw.
Yeah.
That would have like everyone, and he's being led by them. And he's maybe you say something like, "Oh, I don't like being touched," so that's why he doesn't hug people or shake hands or anything. So that's why he doesn't. And I think that adds as well to the layer that he and his father are quite literally very distant. So that's why he doesn't go in for a hug or something, because he'd been like, "What's wrong with your back?" You know.
Well, it's funny because I didn't pick up necessarily on the whole twist. I knew that the stepmom was up to some kind of shit, like.
Yeah.
But I put down a note here. A stroke gives you white face paint ? Because when he was like talking, like the face, the makeup didn't look right. I was like, it looks like he's just got like cheap like snazaroo white face paint on, but then obviously at the end they reveal that is essentially what she'd done. So I was like, oh god damn, like you pulled the wool over my eyes, to be fair.
I would have liked if they maybe commented about the smell or something like, oh, I shit in a colostomy bag now and that's what you can smell.
Yeah,
something like that, because I think you'd be like,
yeah, you could there are various things you could have done without giving it away still, I think.
Yeah, definitely. Well, here's one of the other problems as well. So Mary Shaw's trying to create the perfect doll, right? The doll she can inhabit, the doll she can work, she can use, she can live through. And she's trying to do all these kind of weird and wacky experiments and these sketches. And, you know, she's studying family trees to make note of all of her victims and where they are and tracking them down. And then she's also, you know, trying to work out how to make a human being into a living doll, effectively. I do like the bit where he's eating the soup and it just comes down the tube, just like.
But that's what I mean. It was so that reveal was so gross, and I loved it. I wanted to see more of that. And that's why I'm quite interested to see if there are sequels that have maybe lent into some of those elements a little bit more and given us more detail. Is there any sequels for this?
No, as far as I'm aware.
Really?
Yeah, nothing.
I'm surprised that, I would have thought like straight to DVD jobby.
Sure,
you know,
there's like a doll or something.
I mean, Christ, Puppet Master has about 10 sequels.
Oh God, I watched Puppet Master for your show on Puppet Master. I'll leave a link in the show notes for it, with your mate Hydra Collectibles defending it. And he was like, I'm not defending this one, I'm defending the third one. And I'm like, then why are we watching this shit one? It's one of the worst, honestly, one of the worst films I've ever seen. And
it's not that bad where we both agreed that it was bad.
Yeah, you were both like, it's actually quite shit. I don't know what I was talking about.
What are we doing?
Did a great job. Thanks, Hydra Collectibles. I'm here to defend another movie that I'm not actually going to talk about at all. Anyway.
Nice.
But my main issue with it is that he creates the perfect doll in the stepmom, because she embodies the stepmom.
Yeah.
So and it's revealed in the text that's, you know, it's got her face and all that. So then, if you can create the perfect doll, why is he not the perfect doll? Why not inhabit the dad?
Yeah, because he's working. He bloody pulled the wool over his son's eyes, and me watching. So that's a pretty good doll by any. Exactly,
and like I get, obviously the kid is like a prototype, and he's on strings and stuff. His great uncle, isn't it? It turns out to be his great uncle, who was the kid who was taken and killed. But yeah, I don't know.
I missed that.
How did you?
Yeah, well, that's the missed that.
Well, that's why he kills. That's why she kills the wife, because that's Jamie's son, so he's the next heir in that family line.
Oh, Dan, it felt like there was a rod up my back by the end of the film, to be fair.
Your wife was like, please turn this off. Please turn this off.
Oh,
whatever you say, darling. I don't know what that...
Yeah.
This is so funny.
Oh man,
that's your puppet voice. I don't know why it's like that.
It's better than my real voice, to be fair. People often say that I sound like Zippy from Rainbow, so there you go. That's my puppet voice right there.
What did you think of the score to the film?
I guess I didn't really have a huge opinion on it. I think it was it was pretty kind of standard for a film of that time. I think I noticed the change in score when they did the twist. And that's what instantly reminded me of Saw, because Saw does that when the twist comes. It's like dun-dun-dun, dun-dun-dun, dun-dun, or whatever the theme is. And so I quite like that little moment, like in terms of the score. And as I said earlier, with the weird sound being sucked out the room, like I honestly thought that was just part of the score, and it was a bit weird.
The composer is, I believe it's, I want to say, Charlie Clouser of Nine Inch Nails.
Oh, right. Okay.
Yeah. So
they're a band, aren't they?
They are a band. They are a band. I can't think of a song off my top of my head, but they are a band.
I know nothing about music. We were talking about music before this, and I was referencing Green Day like it's 2001. So
me too.
Yeah.
But you will know this person or someone who's related to the person. The costumer, the costume designer, sorry, is related to another big horror director. It's Denise Cronenberg.
Okay.
And she's related to John Carpenter, obviously.
Yes. Wow.
No, she's obviously related to David Cronenberg, so she worked on the film. So yeah. So I know that we've not talked warmly or wonderfully about this film, but if you had to pick out a few bits that you think, would you say it's worth watching, first of all? One, would you think there's something in here that's worth looking at in James Wan's kind of filmography? Is it worth exploring? Or would you just say maybe just look a couple of clips up on YouTube or something?
Yeah, honestly, I'd say the latter clips. Like it really didn't do anything for me whatsoever. It wasn't even like so. I spoke about Elm Street earlier, and I'm a big slasher fan, so I love my kind of Friday the 13th and some of the Halloween sequels and stuff like that. And they're like, there's a charm sometimes in things that are so bad they're good, or so kind of tongue-in-cheek in their delivery. But this didn't have that. It very much felt like it was trying desperately to kind of be this like highbrow, kind of horror to be respected, and it fell very flat for me in that sense. The acting was just. I don't want to blame the actors too much, because I think the script was just so bad that even Anthony Hopkins couldn't bring out the best in this.
Yeah, true.
So the positives for me, as I said, I really, really loved that flashback scene with Mary Shaw on stage. That was probably my favorite scene of the whole film. I liked the kind of the horror of seeing a child's corpse done up like a puppet, and I thought that would have been a lot more scarier than most of the stuff in this film if we'd saw that a couple more times, or saw the process, how horrific that would have been to actually see her sewing him up and stuff like that, and I did like some of the details in that twist, as I said, with the gruesomeness of the rod in his back and food going down a tube and stuff like that. I quite kind of I found that quite interesting. So you've mentioned it on this podcast that there were ideas here that were good ideas. it definitely had the foundations of quite an interesting horror film, and a horror film that probably could have been beloved if delivered in a different way. But unfortunately, it just fell flat for me.
Fair enough. If so, we were going to do our top 5 killer doll movies. Are there any killer doll movies? Obviously, you're a big fan of the Chucky franchise. Is there any kind of dummy doll puppet movies that you would recommend that are not this?
Well, I mean, you and I spoke a while back about Small Soldiers. I don't know whether that
certainly
falls
did.
Under
Yeah,
the,
I'd say so.
Falls under the bracket, but that obviously is beloved to me.
I mean, those Barbies, like we said, those Barbies were really fucked up. Really scary.
So good. Like Christina Ricci's voice, amazing. I would say as well, it's not a horror film at all. It's a kids film.
Yeah.
But Toy Story 3, the dummies that accompany Gabby Gabby in the antique store, like I love that. And I love that they kind of do horror-esque things. Like one of their eyes is like lazy on one of them, and like they do some pretty like horror type.
The way they move is really disconcerting because they're all obviously just wobbly and loose, and they kind of like tip into one side.
And you said earlier about Billy, like it would look silly if he was like running across the floor like Chucky, but if they did it like Toy Story 3, that's actually quite horrific and scary.
Disturbing, yeah. I love that the mouths are just constantly like flapping, just like as well.
So good.
So good.
So yeah, those are some honourable mentions. I really can't. I don't even think I've seen Annabelle.
I've not. I've heard the prequel is better. I've heard the Annabelle Creation is the better of the two. I've seen The Conjuring, and obviously she's in that. And
I've watched some YouTube videos of the doll, the real doll. Like, it's in like a cabinet, and you can
it's like a raggedy. Is it a Raggedy Ann type thing?
Yeah,
like a rag doll sort of thing.
Yeah.
But again, like we were saying, those ideas. He's gone. I was playing with this. I like this, and then he's gone right. I'm going to do it now. This is it. And to his credit, he has taken those ideas, and I think he's done better with those ideas since. I think he's gone. It's like Tarantino said after he made Kill Bill, everyone was like, "Oh, what great! You finally made the great martial arts kung fu action movie." And he's like, "Yeah, but now I know how to make one of those. So my next one will be even better because now I've learned all the lessons." So I feel like this is a big step in James Wan's kind of learning, and Lee Winnell and his work as well going forward. I think they've all learned a lot of lessons on this film. So for better or for worse, or however the film turned out, and people like it. There's a lot of people that like it. We've got some comments coming up in a moment where.
And if you're a James Wan fan, like it's probably going to be iconic to you because you can watch this film and you go, yeah. That's Annabelle. That's where Annabelle came from. Yep, that's a Saw style kind of twist moment. Yep, that's very much kind of similar imagery to The Nun. Like you can almost see his IMDb.
He's got those, He's got those trademarks
for this film. Yeah,
those trademarks are coming out, and they will, keep going. And he put Annabelle in Aquaman and stuff like that. He's still doing what he's doing. But yeah, I like the idea. I like the uncanny valley of creepy killer dolls, and maybe we'll come back to it at a later date. Maybe I like Stuart Gordon's The Dolls is quite good. I recommend the original, like the first ever horror anthology film, Dead of Night, because that's got Hugo, who's probably the killer dummy, creepy killer dummy potentially. Again, Magic with Anthony Hopkins is great. I like I quite enjoyed the Chucky remake. I did. And we're going to see, obviously, Megan.
Oh, it's great.
Yeah, I liked it. I mean, again, it's I like Chucky, but I'm not like an uber fan, so I'm not like a purist or loyal to that original thing. So, but I had a lot of fun with it.
I am a purist and loyal, but so I was going in very negatively to that reboot. Kind of like, oh yeah, come on then, what you got?
Yeah,
and I was just like, oh fuck, like that was really fun. Like and. Yeah. I don't know if we're getting a sequel to that or not, really.
Well, the TV show's
set up.
The TV show's doing very well, isn't it?
Yeah, really well. I haven't watched season 2 yet, so I'm sort of trying to wait for it all to come out, and then I'm gonna binge it. But it's very much in the same vein of, it's kind of a bit of amalgamation of like Curse of Chucky, Seed of Chucky, Bride of Chucky. Like, you know, there's lots of kind of callbacks to the right at the beginning as well. So it's fun because it kind of feels like a best of, you know, of all the Chucky stuff. Because look, you know, those films almost feel like different genres at times. So
yeah, true. Well, I guess they're always trying to do something a little bit different with them. There's quite a few of them I haven't seen. I've seen the first one, the second one. I've not seen Bride. I've seen Seed, I think.
Yeah, Bride's better than Seed.
Yeah, I've heard Bride's a good one. Seed and the remake, and then maybe another one. I've not seen Cult.
Curse and Cult are good. Curse is fantastic. Like Curse is really, really good. Yeah.
I'll give them a go. Well, you've got Ben's recommendations. What else? I've got a list of killer dummy. This was my list for kind of what we were going to do. So I've got on here. We have the Annabelle films. Asylum. That's another anthology film with killer dolls towards the end. What's it called? Is it not Dead of Night? Trilogy of Terror. So that's the one with the Zuni doll. Have you seen that one? Where it's like an African kind of tribe.
Oh yeah, I think someone brought that up on a show. I was doing a horror show with Past Point Comics, Triple G Comics, and James T. Keegan, and we were talking about horror films, and someone actually brought that up as one of their favorite kind of horror moments. So
yeah, that I mean, it's one of these horror anthologies where that like Dead of Night, like that first one with the doll in like 1945 or where it was, like it's the only good section of the anthology. So it's kind of like, just watch that. Have you ever seen Tourist Trap?
No.
So it's about it's a slasher. You'll like it. It's about a slasher who makes these kind of doll-like masks, and it's a kind of a mannequin museum he runs.
Okay.
But here's the thing that makes it great is he's got telekinetic powers, and he makes the mannequins come to life, and they sing and they do all sorts of weird and wacky shit. It's brilliant. It's absolutely fantastic. It's like
Professor Xavier origins.
Yeah, basically, yeah. If he was lonely and it was schizophrenic, wore weird masks. But
what if the X-Men never existed?
If you imagine kind of Texas Chainsaw, but without the chainsaw and with telekinetic powers, but then a little bit of House of Wax as well.
Okay.
There's a lot going on. There's a lot going on, but it's a lot of fun. I think it's probably on YouTube as well. Give that one a go. I quite enjoyed that one. Tales from the Hood. Have you seen that one? That's another anthology one as well.
No, but you've brought that up before on one of your podcasts, I think.
Really good.
Yeah.
Really, really good. Yeah. So it's kind of like if Jordan Peele had made an anthology movie in the 90s, basically. And
I'd love to see a Jordan Peele anthology movie now. Can you imagine?
I mean, he did do the Twilight Zone series. Did you see that? He was kind of in that.
I never saw that. No.
It was all right. I liked it. Yeah, I liked it. He was the host as well.
I feel like it didn't catch wind. Like, I don't hear many people talking about it.
It got a second. It got a second series, I remember.
Right, okay.
But yeah, I watched Pin as well recently, which is a kind of about a medical doll that a guy thinks is talking to him, and it's weirdly creepy and sexual. That's on Shudder and Amazon at the moment. If you want to check that out. It wasn't my favorite, but I think there's some very creepy moments.
You had me at creepy and sexual.
I always do. But yeah, there's tons more. You know, like Poltergeist with that clown.
That shit me up as a kid.
I tell you, actually, I wanted to mention this. Me and Dennis went to see a screening of it recently, Poltergeist, in 4K at I think it's called Cultplex now. They've renamed it. It's the Chapel Picture House, and every so often they'll put on like screenings of stuff, old movies and things, and they put that on. And I hadn't seen it in years. It hadn't aged at all. Well, it has aged, obviously, but it still holds up. Is what I meant.
Right, I need to give it a watch.
And when the clown comes into it, because they introduce it early on, and then there's a bit. I think this guy hadn't seen it because there's a bit where the clown is sat in this rocking chair and it's rocking, and then it like thunderstrike, and then you cut away, cut back. The chairs are rocking, but the clown's not in it. And this guy from right at the back, he went, "Fuck off." because he was fucking scared. And obviously everyone, and when it comes out, it strangles the boy. Apparently it strangled him in real life as well. The mechanism on the clown broke or something. So yeah, that is a scary story. Yeah. So there's some. I know we didn't do the top 5. I'm sorry for that, guys, but it's Ben's fault. Demonic toys. That's one. Demonic toys. Basically, anything Full Moon does usually has some tiny terror creatures, some like little creatures, be it a doll or I think blood dolls as well as them, and some other stuff. So, yeah, go crazy, go have a look. I've made a list. You know what? I'll probably release this list. I'll put it in the links. I made a list on Letterboxd of a ton of like killer doll movies. They don't necessarily have to be alive necessarily, but they have to be creepy in some form. Creepy doll list. Anyway, I think we're coming to an end, but we have some listener comments, some very, very special listener comments from my own family, no less, which is very rare.
James Wan, then, but yeah.
James Wan, no,
your family's fine.
David Cronenberg, no. So over on Facebook, we'll see what Ben thinks of these comments. Veronica Hall says the film is not the greatest. It has, yeah.
Yeah.
It has some creepy stuff though, and due to the film magic, which we've talked about, I don't like dolls like that. So ventriloquist dummies specifically. Max Byrne, former guest on here and all around amazing human being, he says Fats the dummy. So I asked people what their favorite dummy was, a creepy doll movie, or I asked what they thought of the film. So they say Max Byrne says Fats the dummy from Magic is the creepiest, a very naughty boy. He certainly is. Now, Rhea, also a former guest, she doesn't like creepy dolls. So I again asked this question, and she instantly responded with, fuck off.
Brilliant. Another fuck off.
Just fuck off. People don't like creepy dolls. I think it's that uncanny
That's
valley
just the
thing.
go-to fear reaction is just fuck off.
Fuck off. But I think it is that uncanny valley thing where it's like it is human, has the appearance of being human, but her eyes are like, that's not human. So it freaks us out. I think it's that thing. But she also says, nope. Although I really want to see Megan, I guess I'll have nightmares. Thanks for that. So here we go. My family is finally made a comment on my podcast. Not that they're proud of me or anything, just in general, just about this film. So my sister, Sophie Brazier, says, my favorite creepy doll is Billy off Dead Silence. And she continues, I said, give me a bit more. Go on, give us a big comment. And she said, Dead Silence, where do I start? Cult horror classic. I'm not a horror movie fan. However, this I would recommend to anyone. Forget the rubbish rating. It is definitely on my list of horror films to watch. The jumps, the bumps, and the gore will have you sitting at the edge of your seat. Beware the Curse of Mary Shaw. 100% recommended. An absolute classic.
She's been drinking that night, or...
Can't say.
Hey,
but,
look, opinions.
Yeah.
The variety is the spice of life, and
exactly. If you like it, you like it. Yeah. I like I said, I don't hate it. It's not the worst thing I've ever seen. I think there's something to it.
I can see the appeal. I can see the appeal, and I know that Trick or Treat Studios has a Billy doll and things like that. I can see why someone would want to pick that up.
Sure.
I get it. I want to give a shout out quickly before you carry on with your family comments there. Slappy. I forgot about Slappy. Slappy's definitely one of my favorites. Yeah. Hell yeah.
God. From the film, or would you rather the one from the TV show or the books? Or
obviously, I love the TV show and grew up with that. But Jack Black, as Slappy, was fantastic, and that first Goosebumps film. The second one's not great, but the first one I actually had a blast with. So yeah, Slappy.
Yeah, I forgot a lot of the I used to be well into Goosebumps. So I forgot a lot of the kind of stories and the names of the stories. But then when I saw that, they all kind of came flooding back, all the titles and stuff.
Good
nostalgia. We even had a Goosebumps library at our school. We had a little place where during breaks you could go and pick one up. And they had the create your own adventure ones, and they had the regular ones. And I think I went as the Scarecrow on Halloween from Goosebumps specifically. It was a bad move though. It was a bad, it was a bad move because it was the straw started to smell really quickly.
Oh no!
It was fucking horrible, and everyone was like, "I'm not going to sit next to you anymore, Dan."
Oh.
And I was like, "Okay." So that was Sophie's full comments. So no more from my family. They're done. They're done with their comments. They're done.
I was waiting for like your mum, like your great aunt.
Stop asking me things. When are you going to have children? Find a wife. Settle down. Stop being a disappointment. Most
Who
of
needs
those
children when you can have a puppet?
Exactly. I'm going to wait. Mary Shaw. She didn't have any children, but she had all the dolls. That's it.
Billy.
I just need dolls. So Paul Meller, big fan and former guest as well at the Meller Geek on Twitter. This was a really enjoyable film. Creepy, but very well made, as part is for James 1. I had not heard of this before, so thanks for the recommendation and the potential nightmares. Unsure why they were all messing about, I would have burnt little Billy on the first day.
This is what we're saying.
See?
Yeah.
Man of somewhat similar tastes. Okay, last comment. So John Hammond, so that's at John Hammond on Twitter. He says, can't help but be a massive Chucky fan. I just love that little fella. However, this one gives him a run for his money, albeit only one movie, which I do enjoy, The Doll from Dolly Dearest, 1991. What a bitch.
I've never heard of Dolly Dearest. No,
Dolly Dearest. There we go. It's not a nice looking doll at all. It's really hideous and atrocious. But there you go. You've got a lot of creepy doll recommendations on this podcast, including a Batman villain as well. So we're well into that stuff. But yeah, that's it. Ben,
just dummies recommending dummies.
Yeah. We're the true dummies of this podcast, especially. So Ben, where can people find you and all your good content that you've got coming up, including stuff I've been on and done an excellent job and done a lot of research, unlike other guests?
We'll test that out very soon. But yes, I am over on Instagram and YouTube under Attention Seeking Geek. I do quite a lot of kind of figure videos and showcases and reviews and unboxing stuff like that. I do a live show usually every week called the Geeky Gas Bag Show, where we basically take a look at the week just gone and all the kind of geeky news that came with it. That's me over on Attention Seeking Geek on YouTube and Instagram.
Very good, very good. And we're gonna in a little bit gonna go on your show and do something. So I'll share that once that one's out. Well, it's out tonight. It's live, isn't it? It's live tonight, is it?
It's live, yeah. So by the time people are listening to this, it's already
you've already seen it.
You can watch the rewind to see Dan's little face, because you might not see his little face with
Often.
the podcast format. So I'm giving you that pleasure on my show.
Such a lovely face, a face for radio.
With facial hair.
But I'll after we get off this, I will do a little share and see if anybody wants to join us. And I'm sure we'll have a lot of fun talking about geeky gas baggery.
Absolutely.
All right. So you can find me on Facebook at Secret Bores, Twitter and Mastodon at Dan_Bores, Instagram at SpiderDan Secret Bores. Review, like, share, comment, subscribe, etc. And don't forget to use the hashtag #PrepareForPrattle when you interact with us. If you want to join the Prattalion and to be briefed in full on the Secret Bores, swing over to Prattle World at www.spiderdanandthesecretbores.com. I'd like to thank my patrons on Patreon. I'm Jax Musing, Simon Cotton, Paul Meller, Max Byrne, Scott Hodgson, Mike Burton, Angry Andy, Tonya Todd, and Tony Farina. And for their continuing donations, it is very much appreciated and helps Prattle World keep on turning. And if you ever find yourself in a position to help the podcast, please consider it. So we have been your two dummies, and I hope you've had enough creepy dolls this week. I know I have. So we're gonna leave it there. We've talked. There's been anything but dead silence in this podcast.
We've said words have come out of our mouth. Whether they are our words or someone else's words is for you to decide.
Exactly right. And on that note, we shall leave the stage and go and talk to ourselves. Goodbye.
Bye.